Have you ever stopped to think about what your digital life is actually worth? Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating new economic model called NKAI. And it's designed to completely flip the script on how we value our online participation, moving away from just being extracted from to being valued for our contributions. So how does it all work? I mean, really think about it for a second. Every single click, every share, all the data you generate online, where does all that value actually go? Well, the NKAI model kicks off with this exact question. It basically argues that for way too long, our digital lives have just been a resource for others to mine, not a contribution we get any credit for. Let's break down how it's trying to change. All right, so the entire system is built on a foundational layer that, well, has absolutely nothing to do with money. And that right there is the first and maybe the most important thing to understand. It's called civic proof, and it's all about recognizing your engagement in a totally new way. At the very heart of this civic layer is something called proof of participation, or POP for short. Now, what's really wild here is that POP is something you earn, not something you buy. It's a signal that proves you've voluntarily given your time, your attention, or your effort. You can think of it like a digital badge of honor that just shows you're an active, contributing member of the community. To really wrap your head around what POP is, you've got to understand what it isn't. You can't buy it. You can't sell it. You definitely can't trade it on some exchange. It has zero monetary value. And this is totally by design, to keep the whole system from just becoming another financial game. It's a reputation signal, pure and simple, and it's something only you can earn for yourself. Okay, so if it's not cash, what's the point, right? Well, here's the best way to think about it. POP is a key, not cash. It gives you civic weight in the system. It makes you eligible for different opportunities. It literally unlocks doors for you. But it can never be used to buy whatever's behind those doors. So if POP is the civic key, what exactly does it unlock? This is where we get to the economic engines of the model, the value layers. This is where real, tangible compensation finally comes into the picture, and it's all based on your voluntary choice and your consent. First up is data value, and this is represented by the Jasmy token. In the NKAI model, your personal data is yours, full stop. It's kept in your own personal data locker, and it's never, ever pooled or sold without your explicit, provable, and, this is key, revocable consent. When you choose to grant access to it, that's when you get compensated. The second economic layer is compute value, which is represented by the JCT token. Most of us have these incredibly powerful devices just sitting around idle half the time. This model lets you voluntarily contribute your device's processing power, its GPU, its CPU, to a huge distributed network. What this does, in essence, is it lets everyone create a decentralized, human-owned supercomputer, a massive resource that isn't controlled by some giant corporation. And of course, you're compensated for the resources you share. Okay, so let's put the pieces together. We have a non-money key, that's POP, and two economic tokens, JSMA and JCT. So how do they all connect? Well, the model has this really clever design that links your civic reputation directly to economic opportunities. But, and this is the important part, it keeps the two completely separate. The flow makes a lot of sense when you see it laid out. First, you participate in the ecosystem, you contribute, and you earn POP. That POP then qualifies you. It's your key to get access to specific opportunities. Then, if you decide you want to, you can contribute your data or your compute power. And only then, as the very last step, do you actually earn the tokens, JSMY for data, JCT for compute. So your reputation opens the door. Your contribution is what gets compensated. And where does all this value end up? Well, everything settles in your personal wallet, which acts like your own little sovereign exchange. This isn't some big centralized marketplace. It's a non-custodial interface, which is just a fancy way of saying no one else holds your keys or has access to your funds. You and only you are in control. It's all about direct settlement, so you maintain ownership every single step of the way. Now, if we zoom out a bit, this whole structure, separating civic reputation from money and putting all the emphasis on consent, it positions the NKAI model as something really different from the economic systems we're used to. In fact, the architects behind it frame it as a potential third way, something distinct from both capitalism and socialism, at least as they're described in the source material. Let's just compare the core ideas here. Where capitalism is described as extracting value from you, and socialism is described as centralizing value for redistribution, NKAI is built on a totally different principle, routing value based on consent. And instead of ownership being accumulated by a few or held by a central power, it's always preserved directly with you, the user. The whole game shifts from extraction or redistribution to just voluntary contribution. This all comes together in what the source calls the canonical statement, and it really says it all. The model recognizes participation, routes opportunity, and compensates contribution. In other words, this isn't about paying you for your identity or for your labor. It's a system designed to reward your actual actions, while making absolutely sure that you always remain the sole owner of your data, your assets, and your digital self. So look, if you remember just one thing from all this, let it be this core architecture. POP is your civic signal. JSMI and JCT, that's the compensation. POP is the key that opens the doors. The tokens are the reward for what you choose to contribute, and your wallet is where it all lands, completely under your control. 3 distinct layers, all working together. And all of this leaves us with a pretty profound question. The Enkai model is, without a doubt, a bold vision for a digital economy where value flows because you agree to it, not because it's taken from you. It's a radical break from the systems we know. But the big question remains, can a global economy really truly be built on a foundation of purely voluntary contribution? Well, that's the challenge and the promise that we're left to think about.